Into mine, for example, even the sheer size of the mine, which is predicted to be 220 hectares. There's also the exploitation field, which is about 800 hectares, and also gas pipes, the roads and whatnot. So the region will change. I didn't see that presented well in the documentary, and especially I'm concerned over the, I have to raise this point, of course, I know that there will be reactions, the financial aspects of the film, whether Rio Tinto is implicated in it or not. I know that Peter made a statement denouncing this, but I also know that K. Leuven has contracts with Rio Tinto and other mining corporations, which I think needed to be stated in the film, especially if the film is using commercial footage from the companies itself. So I didn't see that in the film. And last and biggest point, Dragana Đorđević in the film, and also Jelena Vasiljević, the researchers from the Belgrade University. First of all, Dragana did not know she was in the film. She was actually not filmed. The film uses footage from another interview, so she was actually shocked to hear she was in the film, at least in the draft version. And Jelena Vasiljević publicly made several attempts and also wrote to the directors asking to be removed from the film, and that was not done. So if there are different Serbian scientists actually finding this film very problematic and asking for them to be removed from the film, I just, at this point needed to be said,
Okay, your point's noted. Reaction to the documentary. So here we go from the European Parliament EPP group side. What would be briefly your first reactions to the documentary and any other points you want to bring in?
I mean, I saw it for the first time and I found myself a bit arrogant, so self-criticism. But maybe, to make this point better, I mean, we in March, because I'm, the rapporteur of the Critical Raw Materials Act, so I'm one of those who has to explain also to German citizens that we will open mines. I mean, just to put you on the equal footing with Serbs. I think we should avoid, this cleavage between Serbs and other Europeans. This is what I didn't like at all. This was one thing. So we are committed and we will open, we have 170 project applications currently, and we will choose at least 50 to 70 of them. So I am committed to achieve the target of 10% domestic mining. So we will open mines also in other European countries. Just that you know, I stand for this. And then the other issue about, rich Europeans driving electric vehicles, I hope we share the same vision of a clean environment where we reduce the CO2 emissions of cars, which are, of course, driven by Serbian people. I mean, this is what I believe in, that we share this path where we want to go together, because we have to join forces, because we need resources. But it was made very clear, and I'm German, so I saw my chancellor there. We want to build up the whole value chain, and this applies not only to Serbia, this applies also to African countries, South American countries. We are very much committed to this. So just to make this very clear, I don't like this distinction between Serbia and the rest of Europe. I think we belong together, and even more in this common endeavor to beat other practices from China, which are much more dirty than the European one. But just one thing about disinformation, because we will face the same thing. I will face public opposition in Germany too, for sure, local communities. But I think what was shown very clearly about our disinformation media environment, if you talk to the local people and pass on information, you can pass on your information from the opposition or from Serbian scientists. They can pass on their information, but then you have to make it very concrete. Is there uranium? There is no uranium. It was shown, it was measured. I think we should be very honest and talk to the local people, then it can make up your mind. And the shift of making up the mind was very clear, and I think this is the way we should go. To be very open with facts and address the local people and not some very far opposition which comes from abroad.
Can I reply very briefly? The uranium thing is not in the media. Yeah, of course. The uranium thing is not in the media. Basically, the first time I saw it, it was in the film. And also regarding the many Serbians who drive electric cars, it's less than 1%.
Okay, going to keep moving on just to give all of our speakers the right to speak, if I can. So I'm going to move on now, Marco, to you, and just get your first reactions to the documentary, if I can, and then I'll also bring in Julia and Marianti as well. Yes.
So thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for having this platform also to talk about how we go further. So not only, I was invited to so many debates like this, and also with activists. Not so often I would like to be more involved and to talk with you more, because I think activists are important. But basically, what I always explain there is I can now talk about how important is the impact, economical impact for Serbia of the project. Yeah, I can talk to you about how Rio Tinto could not even think about the project if the project is not environmentally given or set to the standards of the EU, because they cannot sell anything on any developed market if they are not in compliance. I can talk about the value chain, because there you talk about colony and so on. I think Alexander is also often referred to this. I can also talk to you that there are numerous companies now existing already in the value chain, like Stellantis is starting to produce electric vehicles in guardrails, like 11S producing the battery cells, like many other companies, ZF, Brose, and all the others. I can tell you that I'm now leaving to Frankfurt immediately after it to talk tomorrow with one of the biggest investment funds that is interested to invest in Serbian businesses in the EV value chain, from the lithium to the electric vehicles. But it will not change the scope of the discussion, because it is not a discussion about facts. It is not a discussion about environmental issues and factual values. It is actually the discussion about emotions, about politics, about disinformation driven by interest groups, whoever they are. So old energy companies to the political ones, opposition, whatever. And this is why I think we will not finish in anything. What I propose is always, and because I'm in here of this audience, because I'm in Civilian Parliament, I think my obligation is to ask you to join with something different. To say there is a framework, possible framework for all that, because we are talking not about Serbia. We are not talking not about mining in Serbia only. We are talking about the need and possibility that Europe had a resilient and independent green energy industry, or let's say clean industry, or to be able to have green transition on our own way. And this is why it is important to work together. And working together doesn't mean only organizing debates. It means how do we institutionally work together. And I will propose it also to you, but I propose it also to my government back in Belgrade. There are three main issues. First is regulatory and environmental oversight. The second is economic and industrial integration. So the first one is keeping in mind that we are always overlooking the environmental issues and compliances that are set with the EU. The second one is the common issue, that we ensure that the integration of economic impact in the industry is given, and one third is disinformation and countermeasures. How we can do that?
Just keep an eye on time. Let's get to solutions then.
There are solutions.
Now, if I can, before you come in, we already heard from Dr. Peter Tom Jones before the suggestion of bringing OMA in as a third-party auditor to make sure
it's not enough. If not enough, we need to build it with real institutions. We need to have European Battery Alliance investment. We have to be on task force, Serbian, European, EU lithium task force, where you have DG Grow, DG Environment. You have the institutions working together very close.
Noted. But let's go into the deeper details in a moment. So you're talking in broad terms about establishing a task force, and what would be the job of this task force?
I will tell you what the job. So, for example, if you providing transparent assessments of the general project impact on biodiversity, water resources, and carbon, ensuring Serbia aligns with EU Green Deal goals, structured environmental monitoring, recommending best practices, ensuring lithium certificates if necessary. Why don't we have, and that's my question also for our MP, why don't we have European Critical Raw Material Agency as we have in the Europe for medicines, for chemicals, it is the time. Do we really are serious about raw materials, or are we not serious?
Okay, noted. So I take your point. I'll come back to you, Hildegard, about that. in a
That
moment.
should be a wake-up call.
Noted. But I do want to bring in our other speakers as well, in fairness. So Julia, I'll come to you, and then may I take to you afterwards. So Julia, first reflections and any comments you want to bring on what you've heard already from our different speakers?
Right. Well, thanks a lot. Wow, this is tough. This is really tough. I watched the documentary. I felt humbled. As TNE, we work at European level. We're not in Serbia. We really can't. It's impossible to take sides. I think we just need to listen. It's quite clear that you have. It's not just local versus European perspective. Even locally, there are many different perspectives. It's just really, really complicated. What I would like to do is maybe just to bring two points that I'd like to bring. So one is European, where I indeed think there's some narratives coming from locals in Serbia, which I do think it's important to discuss, and one more local around environmental concerns, where we as TNE do have authority to speak, and I feel that that's where I'm more comfortable to speak. The European angle for me is quite obvious. We almost fully today are dependent on China for lithium, where it's refined or mined globally under conditions we have no clue about. And we, frankly, I think the fact that we all sit here and we have different views, and on this panel, everyone has a different view and has space, is really great. In many countries in the world from where lithium comes, that would never be possible. So I think that's already a good thing, to have a debate. Actually, it's good to disagree. If everyone agrees, that's not a democracy, right? So we have to understand that if we do lithium in Europe, within European borders, we have a lot more control over how it's done. The one thing that indeed touched me as well as a European is when they say, look, you're going to mine here, and then a rich European will drive an SUV. I live in Ukon, and I have those people, and I hate them too. There is, those one man in a huge SUV, petrol or electric, driving 5 minutes to the supermarket, blocking the road for everyone. It's annoying. There is no environmental organization that supports that. But this is not the structural need for lithium. This is just the top. The top we can shift with policies. We're working on those policies to get people to smaller cars. Join us. There are measures. We're all working on that. The lithium is critical to the entire energy transition. The largest amount of lithium will be needed for batteries to make our system renewable, to move away from oil. It's renewable technologies we're talking about. We can't move beyond 30-40% renewables, solar, wind, without batteries. It's about shifting the entire road transport system and potentially shipping and aviation to electrification for freight, for logistics. This is where lithium is. So this is the one topic. I understand that we are...
No, it's not that. Noted, because there's a lot of people that want to get views, and I'd love to have some questions from the audience.
But I do want to move to the second point, and that is indeed local dimension. So there are concerns. There are concerns about water, there are concerns about waste, there are concerns about pollution. I can say a lot about them, we don't have time. One thing I disagree in the documentary is that the one expert that was saying, she said, look, this lithium process, it's old, you take the rock, you grind it and you leach it. Well, actually, no. So much treatment technology has changed. And with the right, in our view, standards and rules, we can ensure that water is done, in a safe way. We can solve most of the waste problem, and we don't need to have a problem with sulfuric acid. All of this is solvable, and that's really missed in the documentary.
Noted, but allow me an observation. One of the strong concerns that Alexander and other opponents of the project previously and currently have noted is that due to a lack of trust in the incumbent government, there are genuine concerns that even if there are standards on paper, they won't be enforced. So people are concerned that although it may appear on paper that environmental social governance is being respected, maybe in practice it's not. And so, I don't know, from your experience as Transport and Environment, with bringing together so many NGOs, what would be your reflection on that? We've heard about a task force. We heard from Peter Tom Jones about the possibility of bringing in someone like Irma as a third-party auditor. Do you see, from your experience, any way that genuine concern that people have, rooted in not just the science, but also the wider context of the project, can actually be dealt with? And in terms of the way forward, Because if there's a trust gap, for me, it has to be bridged.
So yes and no. So I fully agree that one way forward can be to bring an independent auditor, right? And I'm not sure that just having an EU task force will solve it, because I think there's still a distrust into that. But indeed bringing someone independent like Irma can really work. However, I feel that to be successful, there needs to be also parts of local community involved. They need to be involved in all the auditing and all the procedures, otherwise the distrust will persist. And this is where the largest challenge is, that these people, or some of those people, don't want to engage, right? And it's about disengaging, that's the problem. Yes, we can bring a lot of independent people, but how do they have credibility? They only have credibility if everyone engages, and that's a huge challenge.
Noted, and Alexander, I'll come back to you in a moment and get your view on that. But I want to bring you in as well from the Rio Tinto perspective. So you've heard about the distrust. You've heard about the concerns around the environmental issues. Yes, we can talk about third country involvement or influence. Yes, we can talk about the science behind it all, and we can have big debates about science. Disclaimer, I'm a science teacher by training. I like my science too. But if the way forward is to actually try and find a bridge between the distrust that's there, and there are all sorts of myriad routes for that distrust, what's the way forward from a Rio Tinto point of view?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. The way forward is actually debate. It's a fact-based, constructive debate. And that's something that, for me, and this is a pretty emotional thing, you see the situation we have in the field, and we do tend to normalize things when they happen way too often. But actually, when someone doesn't see it often, they tell you this is not normal, it shouldn't be happening, you know. So, but that's what, for me, this documentary actually shows very clearly. It actually shows, and it's very much connected to what Julia was saying as well. It shows lack of willingness to engage in a constructive debate based on the facts.
If you'll allow me to be devil's advocate here, though, because we said this would be a fair debate.
Yes.
Okay? So, from my side, I look at it maybe, and this is for all of you, I look at it maybe in a more objective and humanistic way for just a moment. If I'm dealing with a counterpart and there's a lack of trust, and there are some also historical roots for that lack of trust, then for me, more debate doesn't bridge the lack of trust. It simply either reinforces it or dances around it. So as much as I think we all agree having a debate where all the voices can be heard has got to be key, I would, and I say this as a professional moderator, as a scientist, as someone who's worked a lot in the bridge between diplomacy and civil society, that debate in itself is a means to an end. So I'll repeat my question with that nuance as a challenge. How can we go past just having debate to actually achieve something meaningful in terms of bridging the trust gap that is clearly there?
Exactly, and that would be through introducing independent voices who are there to actually manage the situation of lack of trust. And these are all the things that we keep thinking about. It is
well, we've heard
about
the suggestion about someone like Irma coming from several.
Yes.
We've heard about maybe an EU task force. What would be your views on those?
So essentially, it's actually a combination of many factors. So one thing is Irma, and everyone who is in mining, we know Irma is the highest standard and something that's not that easy to adhere to. So if a project is willing to submit itself to the principles of Irma, that means they really trust in their ESG credentials of this project, and that's pretty much wide known in the whole industry. The second thing is the industry itself. In this value chain, you cannot sell your products as critical raw materials if they don't meet the ESG or the sustainability standards of the system. We have the battery passport, which has been introduced and will start being implemented very soon. It is not possible to sell your product if it doesn't meet the standards. That's what the industry is aiming for. But Julia mentioned something, and that's something we have been envisaging for the other project. And that's where engaging in a debate comes into play. And that is involving the local community in the monitoring. So when I said in that documentary, we commit to radical transparency, for this project, it means publishing all the data, especially the data about the environmental protection and environmental matters about the project, publicly on the webpage, allowing and enabling the local community to actually be able to undertake the exact same monitoring that the company is undertaking and the regulator You always have the regulator in between, on top of the international standards, and making sure that the local community has the means to keep the company accountable. That is the best way to bridge that gap. Don't trust, but verify yourself.
Okay, let me bring in Alexander up. So you've heard the different suggestions here, and I'd very much like your response to that.
Okay, thanks very much. So basically, I think we're framing the debate, in a very simplistic sense. If there is more information, then that is good. Then that will solve something. But I think the specificity of the other region is that we have a densely populated region with 22,000 people, basically, living on top of this lithium load that runs also through Bosnia. And I think if you would engage even the whole community and build a mine, you would not have a community to engage with, So because people will, if they build a mine, people will relocate, they will probably leave the region, it will probably cause also social tensions. I think in the other project, actually, what's the one of the specific things is actually that you have a region where a densely populated area is on top of a very crucial lithium load. And if you would even bring Irma in, Irma employs 20-30 people basically who do not have a mandate to find or close any mine, So yes, they can monitor, but they can not do anything else. Even if we would have had a Serbian or a Serbo-European Irma, it would not make any change basically, because
Alexander,
they cannot close down a mine.
I know your opposition to these ideas, but again, one of the things we said and we agreed in advance we wanted to do in this debate was also not just shoot down any ideas that emerge, but also propose ideas. So if that's not a way forward, and I don't suggest there is a way forward, I don't want to preload the question, what is the way forward for Yadar? You saw my original question, in fairness. What is the way forward, if any? But I'd love to hear your view in this debate on what is the way forward, if any.
Yeah, I think the other region actually has a very bright future. It's a highly developed agricultural region that produces almost 60 million, euros in terms of contribution, and it can do even better if it gets even more developed. As regards the project Yadar, as things stand now, I think the Serbian opposition within that region is so strong. I do not see any possibility of the project going through, and also if it did, I think we didn't even get into the technical and economic aspects of it, which I think we will in the next topics. As you will see, it will be quite problematic, and I don't think even in this current setting, even if another government comes, that the project Yadar as a mining project will have any future. It might have any future if the Rio Tinto decides to struggle more, which is social tension, and I think that the local resistance is adamant in opposing it.
Okay, your point's duly noted that you see no future for the project then?
No.
Okay. Hildegard, I'd like to bring you in now, if I can, to have a few reflections on what you've heard, obviously, and to bring any points you want.
Then I was not that arrogant, because I said in the movie you can choose. You can choose to stay agricultural and make the best out of your agricultural land, or you can choose to exploit the resources through the mine. And this is a sovereign, democratic decision of Serbia. I made this very clear, and I did not connect it in any regard with the accession part. I can just tell you from my country, we want battery factories. We want, and our young people, they don't want to work in the farming sector. They want to have high qualified jobs, and they want to be in these future technologies. This is the experience I have from my country and from my young people. Yes, this is a decision. I also see a little bit the problem, because if you do it only on a very high level, if you see President Vučić shaking hands with the Chancellor or some commissioner, this is a problem. And I saw it. I mean, I wanted to engage long time also with my counterparts in the Serbian Parliament. I mean, to talk because we are representatives of the people. And we have also in this European Parliament, we have people who voice these concerns from the left, from the Greens, and so on, and we discuss it. But we decide about it. We decide about majorities, and then we accept the majorities. So, I mean, you have to go forward. You can. I don't think this is very bad. Also, if you give a license, you withdraw a license. But I mean, there's a constitutional court and there's a government. These are two different bodies. You have distribution of power, and if a court, even in Germany, if a court is revoking a license, it's revoked. And this happened also in Finland. This happened to, copper, companies even from Germany. They couldn't continue with the project because the license was revoked. This is a very normal process, so I was wondering why it was so disputed. So I can only repeat, and I stand to what I said. I mean, it's a sovereign decision of the Serbian government, and maybe it will play a role in future elections or so. A new, political party or whoever will also make this part of his program. I will be in favor of this mine, and then the other guy will be against. And then people can choose. But I just think there's a big problem of politicization, because many people said it's not about a mine, it's about wood, which everybody knows in the region. This is a big part of it. And I think we should really, we should make rational decisions, because it was referred to. I mean, there are many crazy people out there, also in the US, and we are going in a populist phase. And I think you are a scientist, and we should really, not run into this trap. So we should, combat disinformation. And I think what Rio Tinto really tried to do is to come up with information. And if they offer, or other offers, to bring independent bodies which are globally renowned for their, objectiveness, I think we should not even in such a situation as in Serbia, where there is no objective information, we should seize this opportunity. And also to give some trust to the EU, because this concerns me, if the EU is so distrusted, because this is what Julia said, we are applying the highest standards, and this is tough to do. We did it also with political consent to adopt to these high standards. We should not undermine it, and so give a little bit of trust also to this EU process.
Okay, I'm going to bring in my left-hand side now. Julie, you've got a point you want to raise.
Maybe I can just come in indeed on some of the discussion. So I think we all agree, and I really agree there with Hildegard, that ultimately it's the decision for the country. And if all local people are against, I don't think any company will bulldoze over and build a mine, actually. I think, I hope that the challenge, and what is quite clear, is that there is no single view in Serbia. People are completely divided. Some want it, some don't want it, and there seems to be no middle ground. So it's not as simple as Europe wants the mine, Serbians don't. That's not what it is. But I really want to add actually a point on IRMA. So we've said it many times, IRMA is good, but we need to understand why IRMA is good, if we ever to apply this to this situation. IRMA is good because it's equally co-run and co-created by business, workers, local communities, indigenous people, which is not relevant in the Serbian case. It took 10 years to agree the first IRMA standard. It's not the standard that's, itself is there's many high standards on paper, but building trust takes time. So if we were to do a task force in Serbia, it's not about having European representatives, Serbian representatives, companies. It's actually having it equally co-run by those local people there. It has to be co-done and co-run from the beginning. Otherwise, all of these things that we're discussing now, they will continue. And the challenge here is that it will take time. It's not something we can do in the next 6 months.
Okay, so noted a possible process forward, but also the time aspect. Yes?
Yes, and everyone was talking here, and I absolutely agree. It's a decision the society should make. Do we want to do mining or we want to do agriculture? But in this case, they can exist simultaneously in the same time. And in this case, the decision should be made based on the facts. And here I would like to just comment on two things, for example. Mr. Matkovic on this panel said some things that are really not true. So for example, he said that it is said for the first time ever that this deposit is radioactive in this movie that we saw right now in this documentary. That's not true. Unfortunately, you have
We said I heard it for the first time.
Unfortunately, experts in Serbia have been saying this, and you can see the reporting. And you can see that on that wall or everywhere. You just Google, you would see so many stories that the other is radioactive. That's not how you make a fact-based decision on anything. The second thing, and that's another thing that I think should be corrected. Yes, Jadar is in a densely populated area, but it's not the only deposit in Europe that's located in this kind of area. Look at Zimwald. look at other projects around Europe. Mining companies do not choose where they're going to build the mines. It's where the nature actually puts the ore, whichever you're looking for. So there are ways in doing all of these things. And the 20,000 people around the other project can continue and live around the other project footprint. And that's what we stand behind. And I don't say this because I'm just working for Rio Tinto. I cannot just say something just like that. This is what the data we have collected is showing us. This is what the studies that have been done for years now are showing us. We know that deposit, we have been exploring it for 20 years, and Rio Tinto has spent significant amount of its own funds to understand the deposit. And yes, a decision should be made about this project, but the appeal is, let's make it based on the facts, not based on emotions and not based on information that's absolutely not correct. So for me, that's the way forward. It's actually understand what the other way is.
Okay, so a strong call from your side to make all discussions and decisions purely fact-based. Alexander, it's only fair to give you a right to reply on some of the comments that have been raised. I'd ask you to be brief if I can, just as a function of time.
I'll be very brief. So here I have a document signed by Marijanti Babić to the Ministry of Mining and Energetics, asking them to withhold all information from the public because some of the aspects of the mine are kept a business secret. So she did not write only for a specific sort of information, but she urged the government authorities not to disclose public information regarding the mine. If we want to make an information fact-based dialogue, this needs to be explained. That is all.
Can I respond?
If I could just clarify, Alexander, what's the date? Could you share with us the date of the letter, just for clarity?
Yes, I can actually copy-paste it to you or send it to you via email. The date is 14th of June 2023.
Thank you very much.
And it would be good for us to know what kind of data does that request refer to. Because, as I said, mining companies during exploration spend significant amount of money to understand an ore body. Geological data, and I assume there are a number of people here who would understand, what does it mean understanding ore body? It's your know-how. It's what you spend. It's your commercial. That's what you have. That's the only thing you have. It's the data. So the requests that are related to data that is commercially sensitive for this project and you have invested, they have the right to be protected. And that's not Rio Tinto saying it. Even the mining law in Serbia protects the data which comes from geological exploration. It's written in the law. It is protected for a period of years to protect the investment of mining, because mining companies invest upfront without knowing whether they will develop the mine or not. Out of 100 mines, how much does it get developed? Out of 100 exploration projects, maybe 1 or 2 mines happen. That's the investment, and you protect your investment. We are a commercial entity anyways, but talking about information, the number of pages on our webpage that relate to the environment, the draft environmental impact assessments, are something that should be discussed. That's the document that refers to the environmental impact of the project, not geology data.
Okay, point noted. Right, it's that time, ladies and gentlemen, now obviously with a 35-minute delayed start to proceedings, time is not very much on our side. So what I want to do now is bring this discussion to a conclusion. As I stated at the beginning, I very much wanted to open up for a number of questions from the audience, but time is not going to allow that. What I would like, thank you very much. It's very kind of you. If you'd allow me, please, as I mentioned. If you'll allow me, as I mentioned, I'm trying to be transparent with all parties in the debate. As it was an opposition speaker in Alexander, who was 35 minutes delayed through no fault of his own, we decided to delay proceedings until he could arrive in a sense of fairness. So as much as I can understand that you may not like that, I would from my side like to underline that from the beginning I've been transparent about what we're doing and why we're doing it. So your protest is noted, but at the same time I also like to note the transparency with which I've tried to conduct the debate. So if I may continue, as I said, I'd like now to just draw some conclusions from the panel, going from one side to another. The order that we've agreed in advance and has been agreed by all of the speakers is we'll start with Marco, then Julia, then Mayanti, then Alexander, and then last, as a matter of protocol, as she's the host MEP here present, Hildegard. So I'd like to do that with everyone's agreement, just to conclude things. So as I mentioned, Marco, briefly, just concluding comments from you, please.
Very briefly, I'm always open also talking to the Rio Tinto about mistakes at the beginning, I mean, talking to our government, now I'm the EU institution. You have the skin in the game. Also, it is about our joint future and our joint industry. Recognize Serbia's role as a strategic partner in securing lithium, implement a structured EU oversight mechanism together with the Serbian government. Work with us on investing in a full lithium value chain and combat together with us foreign-backed disinformation campaign. It is the skin of the game of you. It's not, we may offer pick and choose. No, we are not in that game. If we are in that game, then you can forget about project because it is so huge, it is so important, and it is so crucial for European industrial future. Imagine 96% of everything you are importing from China. 96%.
If you'll allow me, ladies and gentlemen, I understand there are strong views in the room, but if everyone who disagrees with anyone who says anything shouts them down, we are doing the definition of a non-democracy. So could we please allow our speakers to speak, whether you agree with them or disagree with them, please? Thank you. Right, so moving on, I'm going to move on to the next. Julia, to you, please.
Look, I will only reiterate what I mentioned in the documentary. We as TNE, we really stand for constructive engagement. And I would really like to encourage all parties around this debate to come together, to talk, to engage, to debate, to also listen and hear each other, and hopefully find a compromise that works for everyone involved. Thank you.
Final. Thank you. Yadar must and can only be developed if it meets the highest environmental standards. If Yadar doesn't confirm that it meets the highest environmental standards, not just in Serbia but in the European Union and worldwide, it cannot be built and it cannot be operated. However, we're not at a point where we can debate that because the environmental impact assessments for the study have not been finalized yet, and they cannot be finalized until we have the next license where we can go out in the field and finalize the monitoring. So let's keep the discussion going. I absolutely agree on this. Let's base it on the facts and see where they take us forward.
Okay, nothing from your side. Alexander, as promised, I'll come to you to give you one of the final words in the debate.
Yes, of course I have to protest because I didn't know we would shorten the debate and not go into the economic and environmental aspects, but taking my time as a finalist here to conclude and to go actually back to the film, I think we're actually simplistically proposing lithium as this future. You all know that there are hydrogen batteries being developed, where there are also sodium batteries being developed. The technological momentum is very different from what we have here presupposed, and I think the film also has this sort of narrative in it that really needs to be countered. Also, one of the things that's driving some of these films is fear. And when we're talking about emotions, I think fear is something that we should address. Why? Fear of China. We are using this project to decouple from China, but if you look at what's happening on the ground, with 15% of shareholders in Rio Tinto, the Chinese state company Chinalco is also involved here. Rio Tinto is also collaborating with Zijin on researching minerals in Serbia. If you want to decouple from China, if you look at what Rio Tinto is doing, it's not decoupling from China. So that's another thing. And the last thing, what I found also problematic in the film is that apart from not showing these alternatives, which we really need to be thinking through, I think lithium is actually holding us back from thinking through these alternatives, especially not car-centric alternatives, because that's also the narrative that we framed. In Serbia also, I want to address some of the things I didn't get to address, some of the inadequacies of the film, where you have even the director of Rio Tinto, Chad Blewett, saying there's no aquifer below the Jadar region. That's not true. Also, I have here lawsuits against Rio Tinto, which are basically done by the locals, against the pollution that already has occurred, and against the pollution that for which Rio Tinto needs to pay finances, and is currently paying finances. So, because of these groundwaters, I think if we want a fact-based dialogue, then by God, we need to have one, and I don't think it can be summed up into half an hour, and I'll end it there. Thank you very much.
One of our outstanding MPs for this discussion. I think it's only fair to give you an opportunity just to bring together some of the things you've heard and a last comment from you as well.
Well, I think it was a good thing to have to film at all. I think it was good to bring Serbia into the European Parliament in a room where we can discuss openly. And I'm really glad that we had a good debate and that we hear each other. Our different points of view. I hope still that we can overcome these differences and follow up on a common path. I mean, you are far beyond, you are beyond cars. There is some visionaries here also this parliament to think in this direction, but they are a small minority. The others cope with current issues like job creation, and I think job creation is a big issue also in Serbia. What I'm very worried about is I have to say to the scientists here that the scientists don't talk to each other and that they cannot agree on the facts. I'm really worried about that. I can just ask the two of you, sit together with your ethics and solve this problem. Because we depend as politicians on scientists who guide us. The whole Green Deal, the whole climate change depends on the IPCC, on scientists. If we cannot trust what you figure out, then we have a big problem. Please sit together on this issue. I'm glad to have had you here. Thanks for the arguments. I would like to stay in touch with you. I have another 4.5 years in the European Parliament. I hope to meet many of your counterparts on local level, but also in your parliament. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I declare the proceedings closed, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thanks for your attendance.
Nema dijaloga i neće biti srama bilo cijelom Europskom parlamentu. Mi smo trebali da sjedimo na kraju te stolice i da iznesemo naše argumente, naše činjenice i ne da slušate laži ove dotične gospođe. Mi proživljavamo to što se tiče njih i nećete nikada kopati, upamtite.